From Michigan Public, this is It's Just Politics. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
A ballot proposal to tax the wealthy for schools decides to call it quits.
Michigan's so-called fake electors threaten to sue Attorney General Dana Nessel.
And could we see the dates of our primary elections change in future years? It's been busy at the state capitol, so let's bring in the politics team from the Detroit News to get us up to speed. Beth LeBlanc and Craig Mauger are both here. Hey, you two.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, Beth, let's start with the Invest in that's MI kids ballot proposal. They announced this past week that they are suspending gathering signatures. Remind us what they were hoping to do.
They were hoping to implement a tax on high earners, so those who make more than $500,000 or more than $1 million a year, and they would implement a tax on the earnings that they had above those amounts. And they hoped that that tax would create about $1 billion in revenue each year, and that would go towards education. As they learned, like many ballot committees, it is a difficult job these days to meet the signature thresholds in Michigan and to meet the signature thresholds and to get valid signatures to meet those thresholds. It's difficult in Michigan these days, so they had to suspend the campaign.
Why did they say they're stopping?
They said that they just took a realistic look at where they're at in collecting signatures. They didn't want to mislead people who are supporting the campaign about how realistic it would be that they could meet that signature threshold. And they just decided, we're going to try this another year, maybe with different donors, different volunteers, with more momentum behind it, with more time to collect signatures. And so they said they are looking at restarting in 2027 timeframe to get on the 2028 ballot.
Craig, should we take anything away from this bigger picture about making it onto the ballot this year?
Yeah, I think it's getting more expensive than ever to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, essentially, you have inflation that's happening where everything is costing more, your groceries, your energy. That includes paying people to go out there and stand on corners and ask people to sign papers that they don't know anything about. That's becoming more expensive. On top of that, we've had a bunch of signature petition scandals in Michigan where some of these consulting firms, small businesses that have been doing this for a long time, they all of a sudden don't exist anymore. I mean, a lot of different entities have been wrapped up in these fraud allegations, and it's becoming harder to do this. And these people that do this work, they don't just work in Michigan, they work all over the United States. So there's a lot of petition efforts in California going on. There's all these candidates in Michigan that are trying to get on the ballot, whether it's for U.S. Senate or governor. So the number of people that you have available to do this versus the number of causes that are trying to make the ballot, it drives up the cost, and it makes this, these are multi-million-dollar efforts. And if you don't have a group or an individual that can come through and write you a 7-figure check to float one of these campaigns, it's almost impossible to do it right now.
And we should mention, you're talking about professional signature gatherers,
yes.
People who are paid to do it. Yeah.
I mean, the grassroots efforts, as you all know, Voters Not Politicians is held up as, hey, we'll just go out and do what Voters Not Politicians did to put the redistricting proposal on the ballot in 2018. But that is a lot harder than it sounds. I mean, that was kind of a unique grassroots special moment in this state where people built up and were willing to go out there and do the work. It does not happen that often. And a lot of these just simply can't garner that type of grassroots following that VMP had.
Beth, I don't mean to be hyperbolic here, but what does that say about Democratic efforts right now on the ground? Small d, Democratic efforts on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize when they're getting approached at a supermarket, or at least I didn't before I started doing this work, that when you're getting approached at the supermarket or at a fair or what have you, that these people are paid. And I think that takes a little bit of the shine off of it at the end of the day when you're looking at these quote unquote grassroots efforts, this base layer of democracy where it's the people bringing these petitions forward. That they're paid volunteers at the end of the day who are working to get these signatures. And the fact that they can't even get paid volunteers to do it because it's so expensive, because the stakes are so high right now, because of the amount of scrutiny that's on this process. I think it's it may just be a fluke. It may just be a cycle in Michigan's election process. But I don't know. Right now, it doesn't seem to be showing signs of letting up.
Although there is some elegance to, when someone approaches you, juggling 6 different clipboards and then just sort of like a ballet dancer spinning around to present each one in front of you.
Yeah, and that you guys are getting at a point that's going to be really fascinating to watch for the political observers out there. We have all of these candidates for governor and U.S. Senate that have to collect signatures to try to make the ballot. The governor specifically, how many of these candidates are going to be able to get the signatures? Are we going to have problems with any of these signatures? I know a lot of people are watching this. And as there is, somewhat of a dearth of gatherers out there and the price is going up, there are some theories that if these candidates didn't start very early, didn't have a lot of money to commit to this, that they're simply not going to be able to make the ballot. I mean, go look at the campaign finance disclosures for some of these candidates. Were they buying signatures early or not? That could be determinative of whether their name appears on the ballot.
Yeah. Well, let's turn to some legal news, and that is that Attorney General Dana Nessel announced this past week that she was not going to appeal a judge's decision that dismissed felony charges against more than a dozen Republicans known as the fake electors. This was back from the 2020 election. Now that group says that they might sue Nessel in return. Craig, first just remind us who these folks are.
I mean, a lot of them are prominent Republican activists and organizers, the insiders of the party. Usually, if you get to be a presidential elector, you're someone that has done a lot of volunteer work for many years for the party, and this is a way to honor those individuals. Michonne Maddock is probably the most well-known of this group, the former co-chairwoman of the Michigan Republican Party, a very dedicated Donald Trump supporter. A lot of these individuals are older, have been involved with the party for decades. The former Republican National Committee woman is another one of them.
What were these people originally charged with?
They were originally charged with an array of felonies, 8 felony counts each for each of the 16 individuals. One of them later got a deal and his charges were dropped. So there were 15, 8 felonies each, mostly forgery. That's what this evolved around mostly. The idea that these certificates in which they claimed we are the presidential electors of Michigan, even though they clearly were not the presidential electors of Michigan because Trump had lost the Michigan election. Biden's electors were the electors. That result had been certified. They were not the electors. Nessel's office said this amounted to forgery. The defense attorney said, hey, you might not like this strategy that they tried to do, but there was no intent to defraud anyone. That's the key words. It's always been the key words here. People argue about whether they are false electors or not and say, hey, the judge dismissed this so that they weren't false electors. That's not what the case was about. The case was about, did these 15 people have an intent to defraud the public when they sign their names to this document? And the judge said at the end of the day, she did not think that they were intending to steal from anyone or wrong anyone when they did this, that they were trying to exercise their First Amendment rights and were being coached essentially by lawyers. Hey, you need to sign this to make sure that Trump still has a chance to challenge this election. So there wasn't a lot of evidence out there to prove or to show that they had this intent that was at the center of all of this.
Plus, there's always that elevated level of protection for political speech.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that the First Amendment says you have the right to speak out. And a lot of the defense attorneys said, hey, my client didn't agree with the election, that it was conducted fairly. So this was their way of speaking out, saying, hey, I think Trump should be able to continue to fight this election. And that they thought that that was the way to do it, to submit this document and continue this fight and debate past the December 14th deadline. The judge was very clear with that and dismissed this, which is a really massive move for a judge to throw out all of these felony charges in a preliminary exam. That's what occurred. And the fact that AG Nessel said, hey, I'm not going to appeal this kind of shows that at the end of the day, they didn't think they would be successful if they took it to another court. So here we are. And now we have this idea, will a lawsuit against the prosecutor be successful? That's going to be a steep hill to climb as well.
Yeah, Beth, tell us about this possible lawsuit.
Yeah, so these electors filed a notice of intent saying they plan to file a suit saying that they were maliciously prosecuted, and that the attorney general should face the consequences for that. I think it's interesting because we've seen this happen in one other high profile case that the attorney general had. That was Rich Baird, who a former aide to former Governor Snyder, who was charged in the Flint water crisis. And of course, those charges were dismissed as well due to a Michigan Supreme Court opinion. And he also pursued litigation alleging malicious prosecution against Attorney General Dana Nessel, and that did not hold up in civil court. So if that's kind of the mold that we're going for, I mean, I know this is a different case, different circumstances, but it is a pretty high threshold to meet to show malicious prosecution.
Beth, what's at stake here?
I mean, I think, it's a question of what is the authority of the attorney general and what is her responsibility in addressing an issue like this. Did she go far enough? Did she go too far? There were obviously missteps in this because it was dismissed and it can't now be appealed. But whether that amounts to malicious prosecution, I think is another question. And I think it's a pretty high bar to meet in civil court.
That is Beth LeBlanc, and Craig Mauger is here. They are politics reporters at the Detroit News, covering all things Lansing and Michigan politics.
So in this huge election year, let's look at future election years. The Michigan legislature is looking at bills that would change the dates of our primary elections. Right now, we have our primaries. Some consider kind of late in the year in August before the November general election. Beth, what would these bills do?
Yeah, so some of these bills would move the date of the primary to May in order to allow more time to campaign ahead of the general election. I think, the Senate, obviously it got through pretty easily there, but the House has already said that the Speaker of the House that they're going nowhere, that he has higher priorities in this, even though at one point the chair of his own elections committee, who is a Republican and the Speaker pro tem, also supported these bills at one point. Apparently she has changed course on that and no longer supports them, but it's going to be a difficult go if Matt Hall is saying he has higher priorities than this.
Who wants this? Who says that this is a good idea?
It's the clerks. I mean, mainly it's the election clerks. It's the election officials out there. I mean, for people in Michigan that have been experiencing all the voting changes we've had, we now have early voting that happens before the election day. And we have no reason absentee voting that happens before election day. And the ballots have to be out by a certain date. And military voters overseas need their ballots out by a certain date. So all of this combines together and creates an incredible time crunch for the people that orchestrate our elections, where they struggle to get it all done from August to November. So they're begging for lawmakers to give them more time. And by moving the primary from August to May, they believe they'd have the time to finish up the primary election and then go about getting all of the ballots and early voting processes and venues ready for November. This is, you talk to lawmakers who know about this and have worked on it. They will tell you this has to happen at some point, that this will have to occur in order to ensure that our elections can continue to function into the future. And there was, I think, a question on one of the outlines that I've been thinking about a lot today. I think it said something like, will this ever happen? Or when will this happen? And I was like, that's a great question. I mean, this is what you all have been covering Michigan for a long time. The partisan and the swingy nature of our legislature makes it so difficult to really tackle some of these election related questions. Because it's always a political football. No one wants to do anything that's going to harm their side in the next election. So you wonder, when will this change happen? I don't know. If not now, when?
Like you said, the clerks want this. Who would this hurt?
The political pundits out there say that changing this will extend the general election campaign So it will give challengers, the people who are running against the incumbents, maybe a better opportunity because they'll have more time to make the case against the incumbent. So you say, well, Matt Hall's caucus right now, they're incumbents. The Senate Democrats who are also pushing this, they're incumbents. So I don't know. And will Matt Hall's caucus be the incumbents in 2028 when this actually takes effect? We won't know that until the end of the year. It's truly a wild situation. And all you have there in the middle are these clerks who are saying, we just want to be able to do this job well, and we don't have the time to do it well right now.
So we're waiting for that super magical moment where non-incumbents are in charge.
Yeah, when will that be? I mean, who knows? Anything happens in lame duck. Right? I don't know.
I think it's also waiting for that magical moment when election issues are not a hot live wired, where everybody gets electrocuted if they touch it. I mean, election issues are such just a problem right now, and in terms of like, no one can agree on what to do next. Everybody's accusing each other. And so finding common ground on election issues is very difficult.
And it seems like there's even bills in Lansing right now which everyone agrees should get passed and can't even get passed, let alone bills where there might be some disagreement on. That is Beth LeBlanc and Craig Mauger. It always goes so quickly when you are both here. Thanks for bringing us the latest from Lansing this week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And speaking of lame duck, Republican Speaker Matt Hall said this week he'd like to amend the Michigan Constitution to require that only supermajorities of votes are able to pass new bills during the legislature's lame duck session. That's that period of time after an election, but before new elected lawmakers are sworn in. In a press conference, Hall said lame duck sessions should be used for routine issues and not meant to tackle controversial questions. It would require 2/3 supermajorities in the House and the Senate to put a proposal to amend the state constitution on the statewide ballot. Only voters can amend the state constitution. We will have more on this story in this week's newsletter. If you're not already signed up, it's easy. Just head to michiganpublic.org to get it in your inbox every Friday afternoon. And that is It's Just Politics for today. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Let's talk again next week.